Hindenburg, and there was something else about, I forgot what the other one was, and then there was this John Wayne thing.
We've all been air crashed out. Very good evening to you there, Anthony, and to Don, both on UHF. The car still going okay?
Well, it had a bit of a problem with the LPG thing, but I managed to fix that today.
Oh, good, very good.
Yes, it's something to do with what they call a gas shock, a SOC. It's all to do with the air intake and the air breather system and all this rubbish. And it was due to be put into the service station, and we had to do some electrical work on the battery, and I put a new battery in it, and anyway, I pulled this carby thing to pieces and rebuilt it all, and reorganised this rubber thing around the carby and put it all back together, and it's all working again. Yes, it was sucking air. Yeah, it was all the vacuum advance and retard and all that rubbish, but it all seems to be okay now.
This is Big.
Yeah, how's Bunny going?
Oh, Bunny's fine. I've just lost 2 metres. Busy trying to change connectors here, but one of them won't fit. Poor Bunny. The other day, poor Bunny lives in the glazed-in veranda area there, and I noticed there was a young wild rabbit just on the other side of the glass. And Bunny they spotted each other, and they came over and they were looking at each other through the glass about 3 inches apart. And then after a little while, the little wild bunny hopped away into the garden, and Victor the bunny was walking up and down the glass trying to find the other rabbit. I felt so sorry for the poor animal.
Well, we know what bunnies like to do, and they probably want to go and do it. They can't through the glass.
Yeah, well, that's good on the glass. That's how the rabbit's going, but there's plenty of other wild ones around that need... I give a hard time.
Yeah, need exterminating. Yeah. Exterminate. You ought to get a Dalek up there with its gun and go exterminate.
Doctor, exterminate.
Bunny eyes the bunnies.
Every time I go to Safeway, I think of those Dalek things that they have there.
Do they have Daleks at Safeway?
Yeah, they have these things that you self-checkout yourself. Whatever, instead of a checkout person, you have to do it yourself. And they just remind me of Daleks.
Look, those self-checkout things, I went through that and I thought, oh, good, I'll do self-checkout. That means all the goods will be at least 50% off because I'm doing the work of that normally I'm paying someone to do. And it was the same price. I couldn't understand that. Like if you took your car to the garage and say, look, can you do the clutch? So, yep, sure, there's the tools there, you do it, we'll only charge you for the tools, you wouldn't pay as much. But you go to the supermarket, you do the work for them, and you pay as much.
I know what you mean, and they still need someone to check your signature on the bank card or whatever it is called these days. And when you get into trouble and you don't know quite which button to push, and I think I must remember to go to the other brand of shop.
A good checkout person is worth their weight in gold. They do it so quickly and efficiently, fiddling with bags and putting on those. I just don't want to know about it. And I don't know if they save that much money really. And there's 2 in Carnegie. One has it, one doesn't. I always go to the one that doesn't. So I'm supporting the workforce, not a Dalek. No.
Did you read the WIA news that came out on the internet tonight about the pirate radio station in Chadstone? ACMA stomped on pirate radio station in Chadstone.
I didn't hear about that. What band was it on?
1485.
I would have liked to have had a listen to it. Were they getting out very well?
To the report, they were audible for about 10 kilometres around, or had about 10 kilometres range, whatever that means.
Really?
It would have been very interesting to see what sort of transmitter they were using or what sort of antenna they were using. I wonder if the full story will ever emerge.
Well, I hope so. I mean, I would have, if it's in the Chadstone area, I would have been able to hear it quite well. I just haven't tuned around their broadcast band for a while.
It said they were on for about a week.
And what were they, just broadcasting music or what?
Yeah, they're getting I think something off a digital radio, one of the digital radio transmissions, and rebroadcasting that, apparently.
Ah.
And apparently they must have got a complaint, so the ACMA used their latest technology direction-finding apparatus to home in on this station and stomped it out.
Stomped it, yeah, I'm sure. On for a week. Well, I'm thinking they just came on for a few hours in the middle of the night, no one would care, but that's a bit silly staying on all week. What did they think was going to happen?
That they came on mostly in the evenings, and apparently they got a ACMA inspectors along with police had a warrant sworn out at the magistrate's court and then swamped on the place.
Couldn't they just ring them up and say, look, stop or we'll come around and book you? Maybe they tried that. Well, I don't know what they did, but it sounded very strange.
Perhaps they needed some overtime.
Yeah, maybe. It sounds like something had happened in 1976 at Burundi Road.
Squealing on KND and the Greek station, if it was 1485, it'd be fairly close.
Yeah, what a silly frequency to use. You think they'd go where there's no other stations and not cause that sort of problem. Oh, gee, I would have liked to have had a listen in and see what they like and even try and do a DF or something. As we all know, getting a decent signal out on those frequencies isn't for an ordinary backyard wire in a tree. It wouldn't have been a very strong signal, you wouldn't think, unless they've had some, sort of antenna. Obviously, is pretty hard to hide.
I was just thinking about it myself, whether they've had a good antenna and perhaps 100 watts, or whether they've had a very modest antenna and perhaps 1,000 watts.
Maybe we might get some inside information of what sort of antenna and power they were using. Did anyone listen to it? Did you hear it, Anthony?
I didn't know it was on until I got up. I read the email today, the same as Donald.
Oh, I would have loved to have heard it, see what it's like. So the department still has a strong arm when they're not chasing people with Chinese two-way radios. They're chasing people with pirate stations, and there aren't too many, really. In the history of Melbourne radio, there hasn't been many pirate stations for a long time.
Unless it was exceptionally dirty and it was splattering all over the broadcast band, because it did say the following complaints.
Yeah, well, it could have been.
70 centimetres, Donald, directly from here.
An excellent signal, isn't it?
Yeah, I can hear Anthony all right too on 70 centimetres. Wouldn't even be that. I'm just using the Barefoot Yaesu transceiver. I think it's, we'll say 30 to 40 watts. I think it's probably 30 watts on 70 centimetres. But we've done this experiment before. I was running 2 watts from a link transmitter, link transmitter, and you can still hear me noisily with 2 watts. So I'm 13 decibels or something like that above that.
We've got someone on Skype-O-Matic too. Want to go ahead?
Oh, while you're sorting that out, Dave.
Yep.
Donald, there was down in Melbourne here a few weeks ago, or a few months ago, they had this court case about the company that you work for, and there was a lawyer that was waving an insulator around in the court. It was all to do with this power line that supposedly set fire to the place on Black Saturday. What was the story with that?
Well, I hear in the news that court case has been settled just the other day. Now, that insulator, I wrote a report about that. I understand that in the court case, in the transcript of the court case, my name apparently is quoted a number of times. I haven't seen a transcript at all, but just people tell me, oh, you get mentioned in the number of times in the court case. So I know of it. I was subpoenaed to appear in the Supreme Court, which is at Spider in Horsham, but I never actually was requested or called in the end. Never had to actually go. So that was all right. Yeah, I wrote the report about what went wrong with the pole and how the fire started and whatever immediately after Black Saturday. So, but I never went to site. I got the insulator was delivered to me. So I know a bit about that. Over.
Oh, fair enough. No, what was interesting is every time the media show the story here in Melbourne, they have the courtroom and they zero on this solicitor, and he's standing there with his wig on and he's waving this insulator around above his head, and I think it's quite amusing because I know how heavy they are.
Yeah, he must have been a strong barrister.
Yeah, well, it was one of those ones you gave me, and he's obviously illustrating a point, but on the few nights that it was on telly, they kept they kept harping back to this same scene, and he's standing there waving his arm around and waving this insulator around all the time. I thought it was quite amusing.
Oh, well, that's all right there. Technical things. There's a whole lot of other things that be going on about and whatever. I could tell you more, but I won't.
Yeah.
It'd just be boring, I think. Most of the stuff I know about that I've heard from the media anyway. In recent times, I think there'll be another couple of court cases anyway. Another 3 court cases. There's one about another one I wrote a report on down at Coleraine, and there'll be another alleged fire at Wirrite, which I know nothing at all about. And there's another fire that involves another power company up at Beechworth as well. I think that killed a few people. Our fires, the company I worked for's fires didn't kill anyone, but the other mob at the other side of town would be associated with quite a number of deaths, unfortunately.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll chat more at Ballarat if you're going to the Ham Fest. I've got 4 tables booked, and I've got all the accommodation booked and all that sort of rubbish.
4 tables? Wow.
Oh, well, I wanted 6, but I couldn't get any because they didn't have enough, so I had to limit myself to 4.
Stuff underneath the tables?
Anyway, we've got all that sorted out, and we're staying at the Youth Hostel again this year.
Now, which weekend is it?
22nd and 23rd October, and then you've got the Healesville one, the new Healesville one at 2nd of November, isn't it? Changed it, and they're not having it in February anymore. I just drive up there the day before. I've done it for years, and a couple of years ago, the soak was still alive.
Yes.
His snoring kept us awake all night, and he kept getting up, going to the toilet all the time, and knocking the beds and waking us all up, so that was fairly eventful. But anyway, I'm glad I got the van sorted out, or the ute. And,
you can put all the junk in there.
I'm taking it in on Wednesday to have a gas tune-up, because apparently you tune them for gas or petrol.
Yes.
And I'm having it tuned for gas, and then I'm going to Gippsland immediately after that to pick up some gear, and then I'll be heading up to Ballarat.
Well, sounds like a busy weekend for you. So you're going to be at the Hamfest, Don?
Yes, I'll be at the Hamfest. Is that Lionel's ute, is it?
Yes, I bought Lionel's ute.
Oh, okay. I was just thinking that Hamfest will never be the same without Lionel's table. I felt like booking a table on behalf of Lionel.
Well, I've got 90% of Lionel's gear anyway. I've got to sell it.
For the estate.
Just started to rain here.
Oh, yes, the weather's been very... Yes, I never worry about the weather. The weather is what it happens to be at the time. Anyway, I think we have our Murrumbina correspondent on the line.
I heard a lot of the broadcasts, actually, and I was almost going to give you a call.
Oh, I wish you had have.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I very rarely scan AM. About a week ago, I thought, I'll just go hunting around AM, see what's there. And at 1485 kilohertz, I picked up My MP, the digital station, My MP. And it was, I thought, this doesn't sound quite right. And it sounded like test transmissions because 1 minute the signal would be low, next minute it'd be high, and when I say high, it was a very strong signal, but then it'll go to extremely low level, and it fluctuated quite a bit. It wasn't all just My MP, but predominantly the programming was My MP, but I did hear some dance music, and then it'll switch over to My MP, and it's quite mysterious. But I didn't realise where it was until I saw, until I got a phone call, actually, someone telling me about the ACMA page, and it's on the front page of the ACMA page. So up until then, I had no idea, because it went quiet for a couple of nights, and I thought, I wonder why it's gone quiet. And then I saw it on the, after a phone call from somebody, then I discovered it's on the front page of the ACMA. So, but yeah, I heard all it, and it would be on generally at night, to usually maybe 12:30 in the morning or something like that. So it's quite interesting.
And what was the quality like?
Very good.
Okay.
With my Sanjian radio, I sort of tuned either side, and I got the impression that it was probably 15 kilohertz bandwidth.
Right.
It had very good audio, but the last time I heard it before it was silenced, it was very low level. So it was fluctuating. I got the feeling the person may have actually had an exciter and an amplifier because it would sort of jump up in signal level, then jump down, then it would almost go like double sideband reduced carrier, then it would go to... So it sounded like whoever was doing it was experimenting with their transmitter, and they haven't announced who it was. So I'm wondering if it's possibly a ham out there.
Well, could be. I wonder if they might have been using a kite or a balloon antenna and it was just flapping around. That's why it was going strong and weak. Or was it steep, very sharp cut-offs when it went weak and stuff?
It sounded like something being switched in, switched out.
Okay, yeah.
So I actually have a recording of it.
Oh, look, that'd be great. I'd like to, if you could MPEG it to me sometime, I'd love to hear it. I suppose it just sounds like music, doesn't it, really?
I've got really it's a video, because it's actually me tuning into my sound unit.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so,
well, maybe if you put it on your YouTube page, and it'd get a lot of hits. Pirate radio is very popular, and it's just in your vein, something you can put on your thing. And with the Baron and the number stations, it could be quite interesting.
Well, yes, but I got this horrible email from somebody. That's why I took it. I did actually have it up, and then I took it down after I got this email from somebody sort of not that friendly towards it. So I don't know who it was, but...
Yeah, I meant the Silvers. Perhaps the Silvers retired and taking up pirate radio.
I think the Silvers doesn't hear anymore, but he could have been. He might have taken up pirate radio. It'd be very interesting to do it for such a long time and expect not to get caught. I mean, you can imagine you do it once or twice, occasionally no one's going to notice. They seem to be fairly brave doing what they were doing there.
Oh, what I think is they had a level of bravado.
Yep.
Like, because it was on every night. I imagine that once they turned up the wick, like turned up the transmitter power, then they were probably getting into people's appliances and things, possibly.
Yeah.
So when they say there was a complaint, I wouldn't necessarily conclude that was coming from a radio type person. It could have been coming from a neighbour or something.
It's not on our database, they would have thought. It would have zipped around there. They should have got a licence, a narrowcast licence. We said we haven't had many pirates in Melbourne for quite some considerable length of time.
Well, that's the only one on medium wave I've ever heard in Melbourne. So I've never come across... I've read about some stations, Radio Uranus, Radio... Oh, there's something else in the 70s.
On FM.
But,
Hello, you're listening to Radio Uranus, pirate capital of the airwaves. Well, we've got plenty of hits to you tonight.
Do you sound corny?
I'm getting a bit of criticism here from our other studio staff whom are battling the picket lines with the Radio Pirate Broadcasters Technicians
We've run
Union.
Out of diesel for the generator.
Yep. It took 7 people to turn the generator over to get the big diesel engine running so that we could bring you tonight's broadcast.
Strike for higher pay, that's what I say.
They want to strike for higher pay. Well, I'm afraid listeners will have to send in donations, and they should be addressed with a stamped self-addressed envelope inside if they want to reply to the Pirate Radio Technicians Broadcast Union, Post Office Box 3000 in your capital city. I can't repeat that because it's... Anyway, we're not really affiliated with them, so we'll give that a miss. Okay, we'll bring you the next song, which is Sex Pistols.
Yeah, but I've never heard of a medium wave one.
Yeah, well, DR is in the 70s. Of course, FM's easy. You just go to a high spot and run a few watts and you cover the city. But AM, you've got to have quite a big infrastructure to do it properly.
Well, for 202 metres, exactly. Yeah. And you've got to know what you're doing. It's kind of hard at AM, whereas, as you know, with ground radio, loading calls and all the rest of it, it's not something for the beginner, really.
Buff off the internet and buy 10, 20 watt FM transmitters just as easy as anything. We're fairly close. You're not that far from Chadstone. Well, I can walk to Chadstone in about 10 minutes, so it's not that far. I wonder how far away he was heard. And at night's pretty hard because you have to compete with all the other stations on the band. So,
yeah, but there's very little on that frequency. There's nothing in Victoria on that frequency, assigned on that frequency. And there's a couple of, I think there might be an ABC or SBS, but not high power ABC or SBS on that frequency in New South Wales. I'm sort of working off my memory, but it's actually quite a clear channel, really.
That's why they used it, no doubt.
But look, it's obviously someone who knows what they're doing, because medium wave isn't really a band for... you can't just buy a black box and put up something quick and get on the air. So
that's right. Yeah, well, that sounds a bit of excitement. He should have had a rowboat and done it out in the bay, and we would have had back to the radio, the pirate radio days. That would have been fun.
Well, it's got anchored in international waters, but I'm not sure what the international waters are, like the territorial limit is over here.
I think you'd have to be a fair way out. I think they've changed it now. I don't think between Victoria and Tasmania would be any good.
No, I think there's a 200-kilometre fishing limit. I think that might sort of come into play.
Yep.
But Radio Hauraki was the last one out in the South Pacific, wasn't it?
Of course, you're a big researcher on pirate radio and everything.
Oh, yeah, as general researcher.
Your official radio plays pirate radio. Very good.
Yes. I don't know if that's good or bad, actually.
Oh, it's just program material.
Well, that's right, exactly. And I've got Jeffrey Archer, before he became a novelist, doing some reports on that on my station. So yeah, it's quite interesting.
Could be all Greek and no one can understand it. So who knows what those sort of people are putting on.
That's right.
Oh,
well, I'm surprised you didn't hear it.
Look, normally I do. If I'm sitting in the car or something, I tune up and down the dial. I tell you why I didn't hear it this week. I was bloody working, and I hate work. Oh, that's why. Yes.
Well, I was working too, but I was getting home late.
Yeah.
I should have called you up because I was trying to work out. I went for a walk down to Carnegie, and because I was thinking, maybe this is one of those super low-powered things that's just someone next door or the backyard, one of those little around-the-house type transmitters. So I grabbed the sand dune, I walked down to Carnegie, and there's no change in signal strength. It started the same, if not a fraction stronger. And I thought, that's interesting. So it's not one of these little backyard sort of around-the-house type MP3 player type things, not that you get them for AM. So I realised it's something a little bit more serious.
With a loop gone around and try and de-eft it,
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say regarding the pirate radio station, which, by the way, didn't actually hear, and it does surprise me. There's an article on the Southgate Amateur Radio News about it. If that interests, it's got a few extra details. If that interests you.
Okay, I'll have a look at that later.
The raid in Melbourne's west. This is October the 7th. Yes, so this is right.
The west, I think it's more like the east.
Yeah, that's odd.
That's another raid. Someone was causing interference to amateur repeaters at Mount Cottrell and Mount Massett.
So it must be a different one then. I apologise.
The Silvers is overworked, plethora of work. Back to the old pirate days, almost as bad as the 27 meg days. They must be worked, and they'll be working through their lunch breaks if all these pirate stations are popping up all over the place to have time to worry about other things. They won't have to go around and booking people for having a Quangxing radio in their cupboard.
Actually, on second thoughts, this article does actually mention it. It
says yes.
Very briefly.
Read it.
It says, this week the ACMA closed a pirate radio station in Melbourne's southeast, Chadstone, which could be heard up to 10k away on a frequency of 1485 kilometres AM. It was rebroadcasting a digital-only commercial station, MyMP, most evenings from 25 September until October 5, until acting on a complaint, the transmitter was found and silenced by the ACMA. So it's probably just a rehash of what was on the ACMA website.
Gone on the door and booked them, and they probably went to the Elsternwick Magistrates Court or the Chadstone's Magistrates Court in the forenoon.
In the same article, it says here, in a further case earlier this year, it was alleged to the ACMA that antisocial behaviour had occurred involving two men on a repeater. One complainant claimed their use of language, subject matter and general behaviour was out of step with the principles of the amateur radio service and its regulations. Both were to have been visited by ACMA field staff, undergone a re-education program.
Re-education? Sent to Siberia for a re-education, that's right. It like the regulations now, there is actually no guidelines to behaviour, what you can and can't, how you can. It doesn't say you're not allowed to swear or whatever.
Yeah, amateur etiquette.
Yeah, we'd sent to the gulag. When
going on night after night after night, it's kind of, you're taking your chances. Yes, they've certainly done their... they've been very active actually down here in Melbourne, haven't they?
It's good to see the government service is actually doing something, isn't it? Our taxpayers' money at work. Monitoring station at South Morang, is it still there? Hope not. The Tandberg recorders will be recorded. Yeah, it could be. Look, I thought it might be like some of these Southeast Asian countries where the stations are start up and you tune across the band on AM and FM. There's stations everywhere with varying degrees of distortion and frequency stability, and that's good. You've got stations everywhere, and I don't think many of them are licensed. Indonesian's got a few. You can hear them here.
But on AM, medium wave?
Yeah. They extend right up from the AM band right through to about 4 megs. If you listen on a good night.
Okay.
Yeah, on the AM band when you're there, or in Darwin or somewhere, you can certainly hear them. Other ones, I think they've just got a free-running oscillators, and they sort of run a mixture of AM and FM activities. Maybe it'll spur other people on to do more piracy. Not that we would condone it, of course. It's very, very bad.
Very bad indeed. Very antisocial. Do you know, Queensland is really the hub for that stuff in Australia.
Queensland?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I thought it'd be too hot there.
No, well, maybe that affected their thinking or something. But, yeah, no, there's a lot of, shall we say, off-book activity going on up in Queensland.
Is that right? Oh, maybe it was a reaction to Bjelke Peterson.
That's right.
There's no ACMA office up there anymore.
See, I don't think there's any ACMA office in Perth. So if you did a pirate missions there, it's going to be weeks before they decide to drive across the Nullarbor and give you a booking.
Well, that's right. They'll only go over there if there's a fairly substantial complaint.
Yeah.
Otherwise, because that's right, they don't have any field operatives there in WA.
Operatives. They get their messages through a one-time pad. They walk up to the fire hydrant, pull the note out of the pipe, and then eat it after they've read it.
Yes. 1, 3, 9. Minor.
Maybe those number stations are the silvers working out who to book next.
Well, it's supposed to be one of the most secure methods of getting messages, to your agents in the field. So maybe they are using. Yes.
Well, I had no idea such an exciting thing happened this week.
Well, didn't RMIT have a station back in the very early 70s?
They had like a campus radio landline station.
Yeah, I think they had an anti.
That's right. Yes. We've talked about that a lot on here. I do remember listening to that. It was on. It wasn't that strong at my place.
And then there's something up in Darwin for Timor or something.
Yes.
Free Timor or something. So there's been a little bit of activity, but not much on this side of the planet. Whereas it's been more of a European phenomena and to an extent a North American phenomena too.
Our radio broadcasting system here has given choice to different programming formats.
Well, see, that's right. I lived in the UK when the change happened. I arrived in the UK in '68, and that's when the first initial offshore stations closed down in August '68. I arrived in '68, and then in 1970, I was 10 years old, I picked up Radio North Sea International, because I was given a radio for my birthday, and that was my first coming aware of such stations, Radio North Sea, and it was a drama in action, because I heard, as a 10-year-old, I heard live on air the bombing of the ship from a rival station, all sorts of things being played out live, in real time. And it was extraordinary. Then the British government jammed them, and then the ship went from the Dutch coast to the UK coast. And then Radio Caroline returned, and they returned as Radio 199 on 199 metres. And I heard all that as a 10 and 11-year-old. Then I heard all these stations around London operating from fields with 807 valve transmitters with inverters, rotary inverters to zoop up the voltage for the transmitters from fields like Radio Jackie and Kaleidoscope, and it was a happening thing back in the early 70s.
Oh, it would have been so exciting. And the staid BBC, they had to change their ways, didn't they? They were losing their listeners.
Well, then I witnessed in 73 and 74 the introduction of commercial radio in the UK. And I actually heard the original test transmissions of LBC in London Broadcasting Company it was called, and Capital Radio. And they were on... both of those were on medium wave, and they gave Capital Radio in London the same. They always used to refer to things in wavelengths, not frequency, but they gave them 538 metres, which is right smack on Radio Veronica's wavelength, which were off the Dutch coast. So their way of trying to stop Veronica getting into the UK, I think. And LBC, so I heard the introduction of commercial radio in the UK. The land-based medium wave pirate stations. Every Sunday morning, 49 metres shortwave, 6 megahertz would go mad with stations. It was a really exciting time. And you never knew what was going to happen next. That's the thing that made it interesting. It wasn't predictable radio.
Oh, yes, after decades of just boredom, they had something exciting to listen to and you never knew what was happening. Yeah, look, it would have been very exciting to live through those times and actually be part of it. I was in London about 20 years ago and there's quite a lot of pirates on FM, mostly playing reggae music type of stuff.
Yes,
and you can tell they were pirates because they're about twice as loud as everything else.
Well, that's why that's why there's been such a push in London for DAB, because the legitimate stations like LBC and people like that, they get, because these stations, what they do, these pirates, they go on top of tower blocks, like residential tower blocks around South London, and they put their transmitters up, then they have infrared links to their studios. Actually, it causes a lot of problems, both to the people in those apartment blocks, in those tower blocks, as well as to people like LBC and other stations around London, because they get blocked out. So they're pushing DAB as a way of bringing listeners over to digital, which is a much more difficult technology for pirates to deal with, multiplexes and the like. Because in London, the FM band is just totally swamped with pirate activity.
So it still is.
Oh, very much so. Most of it is dance music, probably reggae music as well. It's kind of a little bit sort of away from mainstream into either dance music, reggae music, those sort of club culture, that sort of thing. And often there's a business link, like they'll promote nightclubs, or there's a few links actually. Some that's a little bit questionable.
Yes, slight criminal overtones to it in some respects. Right. Maybe they could just leave FM to the pirates and all the official stations go over to DAB. They need a special pirate multiplex.
That's right. Talking of DAB, I bought a DAB radio.
Oh, very good.
Because you've had one for a while, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got one from someone at my work. Said, "Oh, look, I got one of these, $45." And I thought, you're kidding me. And that was from Target was selling them. So I
getting cheap,
very cheap. But the special for $45 went off. But I went to Target in the city and I bought a DAB radio for $49. The last one in the store actually. But I think I've got it right here. It's called a Jensen, Jensen. So I'm not sure if that's one of their home label electronics device. But actually, it's amazing. We've got 49 DAB stations in Melbourne.
Some of the music-only stations I tune across, and you get an exposure to music you wouldn't otherwise hear.
And the community stations have gone over to it as well, haven't they?
They have, yeah, that's right. Oh. Having said all that, most people listening on a clock radio or in the car couldn't tell a difference between between FM and DAB. So is your radio, it sounds okay, does it?
Oh, it's great. I haven't tried with headphones though, but I must admit, all I really listen to is ABC News Radio in the kitchen with it. But when I first got it, I did sort of scan the stations, and I counted all 49. And there's a lot of choice. There's a couple of missing genres that I think it'd be good if they had these other music styles. For example, lounge music, chill out. Yeah, chill out music isn't the same as lounge. I think they should have lounge music and also a new age ambient type station. I think they would really add to the choices. Of
hip hop and dance and electro techno stuff. It's a country of probably need 59 or 109 to cover all the different genres.
I was thinking today. I was in the city and I took my Sanjin into town. I went for a walk down by the Yarra after I did all my other stuff I had to do, and I did a scan of FM. And there's no spare channels on FM. Everything is used. Then I think of all the stations on AM and all the narrowband stations, the low power open narrowcast FM stations, the community stations, SBS, ABC, commercial. I'm surprised anyone's got any listeners because it's just so much really. And then you've got 49 DAB stations.
I wonder how many of these stations, sometimes they must have no listeners, like in the middle of the night, a community station or one of those DAB stations, there's probably nobody listening.
That's right, because in the old days, had a choice of 6 or 10 or 12, whatever it was, and the audience would basically go from one to the other. But now, not only do you have a very sizable number of radio stations, whether it be AM, FM, DAB, VHF, high band, narrow band, or AM narrow band, but you've also got all these TV channels now and Foxtel and you've got the internet. So getting people to come to any one thing is going to be a task and a half.
Particularly in the country, and there was the local station, there was the ABC in Albury or whatever, which was sort of local strength-ish. And the only other stations that were of local strength but weaker there was Wagga and 2QN. But basically most people listened to the local station. There was no FM or anything like that. You go up there now, there's about 20 stations on FM. Who would listen to an old-fashioned AM station anymore? Obviously their revenue must be really reduced from what it was 20 years ago.
That's why they see everything now. Back in the days when there wasn't the level of choice, you had critical mass. So stations played a greater variety of, like if we talk music stations for a start, they'd have a much greater variety of music. Now everything's compartmentalised, so that one station aims for a particular demographic, one aims for a different demographic, one plays hip hop, one plays retro rock, and one plays modern pop, and so everything now is fragmented. So if you want to market, say you're in the music business and you want to market a record to the masses, you've got to somehow or other get through that maze of all these different, because it's all run by accountants and lawyers now. The media, it's not run by real radio, TV, or that sort of people, and so trying to get stuff through that whole maze, and if you're in the music business and you want to make a hit, it's that's why everyone's shouting now. Like they're trying to use shock or some other aspect to get above the noise level, because it's just it's fragmented, it's broken up into little compartments, and there's too much of it. There's too much. In a way, we have too much of everything, which makes it so even more difficult to get through it.
We are drowning in a sea of information and entertainment. I sometimes just have to switch off. There's a million things coming on the internet you can watch, a million YouTube clips, a million TV and radio stations, we're overwhelmed by it. I just feel I want to scream and turn everything off.
That's right. I feel the same, quite frankly. I like having choice, but then I realise what comes with it is, what do you choose? It's like a kid going to a lolly shop and having a million different lollies, and he's got his pocket money to spend, and you think, well, I don't know. It's just too much stuff. And so what happens is we tend to, and I think this is true of probably most people, we tend to gravitate towards, we probably all go to the same 6 websites all the time, There might be 20 billion things out there, but knowing what to find out there that's the hard thing. There's just too much. It's like having this mammoth phone book, and it's got everything in it, or encyclopedia or whatever, but you're constantly getting conflicting whether to go to this or to go that or something else, and there's so many choices. It's difficult to narrow it down.
It certainly is. And I know you tend to keep going, go back to what you're familiar with, but I sometimes try and push the boundaries. I spend a bit of time just surfing on things totally off what I normally do. The stations I've really got no interest in, but you think, gee, that's not bad sort of music, that, and you've learned something new. It's very easy to go back. Look, I know people, even this day and age, they are still listening to the same music they did in the 70s. The only stations they listen to is Gold 101 or whatever it is. They have that in the car and at home, and they're still listening to the Eagles now, for God's sake. I mean, OK, they're a good group back in 1970, but I'm sick of them. Never want to hear it again. Some people, that's what they still listen to.
Here. They've also got to compete against MP3 players, of course. And I wonder, people playing MP3 things, whether you get stuck in a rut, you hear the same stuff all the time, that your favourite stuff, and you never ever progress. I like listening to radio stations because they give you a bit of variety.
You don't know what's coming up next, exactly.
The kids at schools and stuff, what they do, they swap music. They do get exposed to music that they probably, the stuff that they like, their friends will swap them files of music that they think they might like. So they tend to get all mixed up like that. And kids don't listen to the radio much anymore.
I don't think kids listen to the radio at all.
They don't. They don't even know how to turn it on. They have no idea. It's just a thing old-fashioned people listen to. They've got to put up with it in the car or something. That just listen to time bits in the morning. Listen to people listen to AM or John Payne or something, and the kids just think it's some old-fashioned thing that's of no relevance to them at all. It's no relevance to me anymore either. I hardly ever listen to it.
I've got a CD on Sunday mornings from 10 until 12. There's what do you call it? The net that starts with QNI, Morse code net, and I record that and make a CD of it, and then play it in the car, so I can try and learn Morse code. But I think my brain's just not adapted to it. But anyway. And I was driving in the car park at work with a window down the other week, and the Morse code's going on the radio, and someone said, "Is that on the radio?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "This car is a very old car and it only picks up Morse code on the radio."
A good way of learning it. The number of people, as soon as they get in the train, they plug their white earphones on, play with their iPods or their mobile phones and just listen to stuff. People have got things in their ear and they're just listening to their iPods.
There's a fellow Scott at work. I've butted in, have I? A fellow Scott at work. Remember me telling you about the fellow with the EL Falcon that had all this fancy equipment in it? Remember me telling you about that about a year ago?
Yes.
Well, the same fellow's got these Pioneer headphones for DJs. They have emphasised bass. And he has them plugged into his computer all the time at work. I remember walking past his desk a few months ago, and here he is listening on his headphones, and his phone's ringing. He's completely oblivious to his phone ringing.
And people walk across the street listening to the headphones, and they're going to be run over by a tram or something. I find it very disconcerting wearing headphones when walking. Or a very dangerous thing. You're in a world of your own, and you can't hear what's going on.
I'm really shocked at the lack of choice or lack of new innovative radio. You would expect it with all these extra stations there'd be lots of innovation, lots of new types of programming, but I just haven't seen it. I mean, a lot of the time when you tune into community stations, the disc jockeys are just trying to copy what the mainstream stations are doing.
Or they just talk too much. What can you do? You play music or you talk, or you have a mixture of both.
Yeah. Actually, I agree with what Peter said there, because that's true. Like, I was listening to, at work, one of the daughters of someone I work with, she does a show on Eastern Mountain and District Radio, an FM station, and I was listening to it, and really, there's not much difference between these shows and shows on other stations. But you're right, I mean, it's either someone playing records and talking, a bit of chat in between, or it's talkback. Whereas that's where BBC Radio 4 is good, because they'll have science and education and drama and all that sort of thing in the audio medium. But that costs money, I guess. It costs money and resources to be able to make interesting audio like that.
I think the more information you've got, almost the less I take part in it. Like newspapers are the same. It's lots of photographs and ads, and it employs photographers and journalists and whatever. But there would be there's one or two articles I might actually be interested in.
Now, I haven't got the patience to go through it anymore.
Yeah, most of it's just football and sport and rubbish that I'm not interested in. And then you look at them, the weekend magazines, all glossy and super high-resolution photographs, and I look through, it's just eye candy. There's nothing in there.
What about podcasting and vidcasting? I must admit I've seen a bit of innovation there. That does certainly seem to be sort of a greenfields of new ideas.
That's right, I agree. It's like I have, and this is where I think people tend to have their 6 or 10, whatever, favourite sites or podcasts. And I what John was saying before about people with headphones walking around, I'm a bit guilty of that. But it is actually good to go for a walk and listen to a podcast while you're walking. I find that it kind of works for me in that I might be switched out from the outside world, but I'm going for a walk and I'm listening to a podcast rather than static and listening to it.
You might be run over.
I better use my eyes then.
But better still, how about...
Oh, by the way, Chris, I liked your videos. And
Which one?
The one with you're at a Hamfest with Dave and TOQ. I saw Anthony and a few others. I think that was John standing next to Anthony.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the only thing that troubles me about uploading those HD clips is that on 1080 pixels, typically 1 minute of clip takes about 50 minutes to upload.
Now, I don't know how long you've been listening. Did you hear that pirate station we were talking about earlier?
I haven't. Just came on literally when I spoke. Which channel was the pirate on?
You better tell Chris the story again.
Well, Chris, I'll just quickly say, no, there was a station on 202 metres, 1485 kilohertz, which was broadcasting every night over the last... when did they finish? Last week sometime, I think it was. Maybe finished last Thursday or something. But they were on every night. Predominantly, the program material was a replay of a rebroadcast of My MP, the digital station.
From the 25th of September to the 5th of October.
Holy moly.
It would be interesting to know. I must admit that I was very curious, like, are they using a home-built transmitter? Is it valve or is it transistorized? What's the power? What type of modulation are they using? What type of antenna? The ground radio system? All those thoughts were going through my head. And I thought, whoever's doing it, they've got to know what they're doing, because FM's easy. If you can buy a FM transmitter off eBay in a flash, but AM is kind of, you have to build it yourself.
It struck me, though, seeing as they said Chadstone was the suburb of choice, that the Chadstone shopping centre roof would actually make a good ground plane.
Well, okay.
Yeah, Kiss FM have 87.8 megahertz from Chadstone Shopping Centre, but that's actually not on the air at the moment. It tends to come and go. But their 87.6 transmissions, theoretically, from Collins Street, come in very strong up here where I am in Murrumbeena. So I sometimes wonder what their output power. I think it's more than 1 watt. Oh no, Pete. All I was going to say, I guess it's, if you're up high enough and you're on FM, then it will travel, won't it?
By the way, I should point out I've just built a radio, a regenerative one-valve radio, which is working quite well. I've got the radio without an antenna. If I add an antenna, it overloads it. But the station from Bayswater overloads it. Anyway, I was going to say, though, that station in Bayswater, which I've seen the studios of, it's in the Bayswater shopping centre, it gets out really, really well. And I must admit to being just a tad curious as to what it's using for an antenna, because it does radiate a pretty good signal.
Basically a 50-foot top-loaded Hills mast.
Yeah, you can see it in Google Street View. I've had a look as well.
Yeah, it's basically the same sort of antenna I've got, very similar.
On top of a tin roof or something, isn't it?
That's right, yeah. It's professionally put up, but it's quite impressive looking.
A really big tin roof is so much better than any earth radial system you could put down. It's just wonderful, as long as it's all bonded together properly.
Yep.
Is that on top of the shopping centre, the antenna, or is it elsewhere?
No, at a factory, Peter, it's I did have it. If you put the frequency into the ACMAP database, it'll give you the address, and then you can just have a look in Street View. I can't recall.
Yeah, go for a drive past it. It's quite impressive. They make boats or something. The factory. I don't think the factory's got anything to do with it. They just rent their roof space.
I live very close to Bayswater.
Who was behind it?
We don't know. We'd like to hear the details. Maybe they're listeners. Maybe they're listeners of ours.
No, Chris, just go to the ACMA homepage. It's on the front page of their homepage.
Oh, okay. They don't give any details as to who the culprit is.
No, I think the ACMA approach now is that, and this is my understanding, they'll actually give a warning to the person. I don't think they necessarily take the proceedings to court and all that if it's the first time. So I think that's why I think there's no name. I think it's probably the person, they were shut down and told not to do it again.
Next time they'll get booked.
We're just guessing, really, but the station was closed. But we don't, I don't know what actually transpired other than ACMA's press release, which is on their homepage. But I think the process now, there's ACMA on their website have details of how they deal with such things, and from my understanding, is that if it's a first time, they'll try and resolve it without having the need to go to court and pursue those other avenues. So,
well, that was my experience at the age of 15, but then, of course, I was a young, naive idiot at the time. Now I'm an old, naive idiot.
Interesting that the station was on air at the same time as the school holidays.
It does, look, there is a correlation there, I must admit.
Well, I would say so, and I actually say this because of the station they're rebroadcasting, my MP. It's an older demographic type station. It's not a youth station. So
Hey, that's a point too, yeah.
1001 strings.
I suppose it would have boosted the ratings of my MP.
You know, there are some stations up near, I don't know of anybody who's even heard them. They're on the list.
Oh, look, you know, the families of the people who are announcing on them probably listen.
Well, that's right. Look, that's my thoughts too. I think that they're probably more listened to by the people involved with the station than...
I remember years ago when 3CR first opened, we had the Albanian People's Hour. I remember thinking at the time, with about 5 people producing the program inside the studio, there were probably more people listening through the studio monitor speaker than there were listening on radios.
The Albanian People Hour. That'd be a great show.
I quite liked 3CR back in the old days. It was kind of nicknamed Communist Radio. And
it was... initially, when it opened, it was fairly broad spectrum, but it fairly quickly went into a leftwards slide.
And I love the transmitter, the antenna up at the back of the town hall in Collingwood, was it?
Well, that was the second antenna. The first one was on top of the back of the shop at Elizabeth Ashley at High Street, Armidale. That was in 76, 77.
So what sort of antenna was that?
You stood in front of the building and looked up at the antenna. It was painted this primer pink, so it was a red antenna, and it leaned slightly to the left if you looked at it from the front.
That's right. We used to call it the red tenors for a very good reason. I've got film that the Knock took of the red tenors back in those days in Armidale.
Oh, this wasn't the film that showed the Beck in his uniform, is it?
I don't know about uniform. I'm in a skivvy, very trendy for the day.
Now, in that case, you should be booked for bad taste.
When I used to wear my skivvy and my sports coat, I thought I was so cool. My houndstooth jacket.
Sounds like something that Pee Wee Herman had be wearing.
Dave, weren't you going to put up some new videos on your site?
It's such a pain in the ass to do. Then you've got to upload them. It takes hours to upload them, and then you've got to... video editing's a pain in the bum. And
well, I must say that editing...
If you do YouTube clips, you've got to do them, make them reasonably professional, and you've got to write a script, and then you've got to get someone to voice it. Then you have to write a score and get an orchestra to play it.
Very
just so complex. Then you have to get copyright clearance and all this sort of stuff. It just takes hours and hours.
That's like your Borders video.
No wonder you haven't been taken to court already. The only saving grace is that they're in receivership and can't afford the court costs. Oh, dear, yes. Advertising it as a reading room would not have been particularly desirable, I think, Dave.
I see there's another cheap book outlet in where Borders used to be in Chadstone now.
Oh, is there? Because
Yeah, the bottom floor is now, cheap books or something. All books are $5. So you can go in there, and they're using the old Borders shelves and all sort of stuff. So, no seats, though. No chairs for people to sit down and read. You've got to stand up and read if you're going to read. We do.
Yes, I miss that sitting down upstairs in Borders.
It was so luxurious, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. I could sit down and read a whole book cover to cover.
I don't know whoever thought that was a good business management plan, just to make a library, and maybe if people felt in a good mood, they might buy an overpriced book.
Well, I bought a couple of books there. I thought I'd better do the right thing. But it's great. You know, if I ever had time to kill, I'd just go there, read a book, and walk out again.
I think that's what a lot of people used to do. Sometimes the chairs were too busy and you had to sit on the floor or something.
Yeah, but the upstairs you could always, or generally, you had a better chance of getting a upstairs. Yes.
Yeah.
I went to Dimmicks in the city recently, and there's no seats.
They've learned from Borders.
They're very uncomfortable to try and read a book.
Comfortable seats. All people are going to do is sit there and read, aren't they?
That's right. Well, if it's raining outside, then what better thing else to do? You don't, just go up into Borders, sit down and make yourself comfy and find a book to read, grab a few magazines, and you're right.
I wonder if they ever kick people out if they stayed there too many hours.
Yes, I don't know.
this isn't a library.
Yes, I've had that. I've had that in newsagents, actually. And I've had that, this isn't a library. I've had that said to me in newsagents. So I put it down and walk out.
And isn't it terrible when, silicon chips in plastic or something, you can't rip it out? I must admit, Borders used to rip their magazines out of plastic so you could read them without having to do it yourself.
Maybe someone else ripped them out of the plastic.
Maybe the only time I go in there is to buy some tickets for the train. Met tickets.
Oh, so you don't use my key?
No, I use the old-fashioned technology.
Oh, see, I use mine every day, so...
Yeah.
So Mikey's all right. Yeah, I must admit, look, the only time I used to go to newsagents was likewise when I used to buy the Met tickets there. And now, since I've been using Mikey, I just top it up at a railway station and that's it. So I never go to a newsagent. I never buy papers.
I haven't been to a newsagent for quite some considerable length of time. And a lot of them, they're really just Tattersalls agents. They're more worried about selling Tats tickets or whatever happens. I don't understand that.
Yes, actually, apparently, if you're a newsagent, you buy a news agency, often they'll look for the Tattersalls agency component of it because it can be quite lucrative.
Anything gambling, people throwing their money away.
Now, I think out of the whole group here tonight, I'm the only one who actually heard this station.
You did. It's remarkable that you mentioned it. Yeah, I think didn't Don mention it first? Then you actually heard it. That's great.
Oh yeah, because I missed the part when Don was. I sort of came in partway through the. So Don actually, because was there an email floating around? Was there?
I think he saw it at the ACMA site.
Oh, okay. By the way, talking about Don, that's a great video of when you went to his transmitter hall up.
It's a transmitter hall. Yes, it's nice hall, isn't it?
Oh, nice 160-metre transmitters there.
Yes, that's right.
5 watts.
Yes. Maybe there's someone in Chadstone with similar equipment.
Look, when we think about it, at first it's on medium wave AM. It's playing my MP. So that tells you that it's going to be someone of it. To me, it tells me that it's not going to be someone necessarily young doing it. It's going to be someone who's been around the block and knows their way around a transmitter and an antenna.
Look, it's pretty dumb to rebroadcast another broadcast station, really. It would be much easier if he had just used random CDs.
Especially when it's a digital station, when there's not going to be harmonics down there.
My MP is basically the old 3MP playlist on digital that no one listens to. Play it on AM and you've probably got listeners.
I mean, you could always bring back beautiful music 3AK, I suppose.
Beautiful music, 24 hours a day, every day, 3AK.
With Ray Lawrence.
Of course, when 3AK went to beautiful music, it was quite innovative. They went from No Wrinklies Fly, a teenage station, overnight Wrinklies.
That was, God, they originally were Television City Radio about 1970 because they were in GTV9 in Bendigo Street, Richmond.
That's right.
They got done by cross-media ownership laws. They had to sell off, the Packers had to sell off 3AK. I think that's when they changed to a Muzak station. I think that's about 1976 or something. What's this wallpaper music? Welcome to Buckley and Nunn. Third floor, ladies' lingerie.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Fourth floor, kitchen appliances.
This is the music they played when 3LO announcers went on strike.
I think I now know why they went on strike.
No, they picked this music. The ordinary standby music was too popular, and I don't know where they got it from, but it was just fantastic. Just this lift music.
That's exactly what it is. You know what this is like? It's like listening to the New Zealand broadcasting.
Yes.
I hope there are no New Zealanders listening, but the NZBC really is mega boring. There's Hammond a Go-Go in the background.
No, that'd be too bright. It is just so... It's just that typical 60s lift music. There's an announcement here somewhere, I think. Mary Adams.
breaks me up.
They play this for days. It's so bad it's good. We apologise. The programme scheduled for transmission at this time will not be broadcast due to a strike by ABC announcers.
And the music effectively says, "And up yours, Freddie."
I think that was even too popular and they had to take that off and put on just tone.
Oh dear, oh dear. Did they ever broadcast music on VL2UV? I think they did, Links.
The Links, I never heard an actual musical program.
No, but I think there were links on it.
Yeah, there might have been a restriction of what... Oh, here we are. Here's the Adams. I'll just... 45... Here we are.
Is this about 1978?
Oh, something like that. We'll see where Mary Adams comes in.
Due to an industrial dispute involving Victorian announcers, the program you would normally hear at this time will not be heard.
Oh, now they've gone country.
Country, yeah, that's good, isn't it?
What sort of tree was that?
Let's see what else they've got.
I think I'm going to be sick.
Oh, this is my favourite.
This would go well behind your video of Kerr for Governor General is like Ron Barassi for umpire.
Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba.
Melbourne needs a radio station playing that kind of music 24 hours per day.
In the US, there were stations, some stations used to play that sort of music, just lift music 24 hours a day, years ago. But there should be a DAB station playing lift music.
Well, that's right. Lift music, lounge music, and ambient music.
Yeah, it's got I'd quite like that to some extent. Yeah.
Well, let's be honest. I actually bought an album called Elevator Music because I'm modernistic in parts, but also I like to me there's an art in that as well, and it's all instrumental. And what you can do with instrumental music is quite interesting, where you have to get keep the interest flow going with interchange of the instruments. So one of the things with Beautiful Music 3OK is that I noticed. I remember actually because my aunties, because I was still quite young back then, they'd have it on the car, and a lot of the songs would have use of xylophones and vibraphones, and they're actually quite good sounding.
This lift music, it's actually very well produced. It's very, the professionalism in the recording and the musicianship's very good. Produced to the nth degree, shall we say. It's very smooth, doesn't jolt or jar you. Just goes on and on and on.
And on.
No, because in the Egg video, it has that kind of music. The one with the egg in his studio.
That's Busy Bachelor. That's a chapel record.
Well, you don't want too much top end or bottom end, do you?
No. They don't pick any known tune. Sometimes it starts to sound like a known tune. It goes into it and pulls away again. And
that way they get the mechanical royalties and the performance royalties. I've got to remember those ones as well.
Yeah.
So when they sell the records of 3OK's greatest hits, which by the way I've got, although I think it does have some covers on it, come to think of it, but the writers of that get the mechanical royalties for every album that's sold, and when it's played on the radio, they get the performance royalties.
Right, okay.
Who pays who?
Okay, APRA and AMCOS, they used to have separate roles. APRA looked after performance royalties, and AMCOS...
Like a commercial station, how much do they have to pay per track?
It's some kind of formula, Dave. Now, that's a tough one, because... I actually, as you know, I'm in the music game as well. I used to have a lot of stuff on Channel 9's Simon Townsend Wonderworld, and then it became just Wonderworld. And every 6 months I used to earn royalties from music that was used. But you'd have to, quite often they wouldn't fill out, because they have to fill out a sheet with what gets played on each program and when it goes to air and all that. And if the station, if Channel 9, let's say at that time, was playing repeats, often that it would get neglected. So you'd have to kind of keep tabs on it yourself and a record of when your music was used and know about it. But TV can be fairly, lucrative for just stuff used in backgrounds on the stories.
Right, okay.
When I say lucrative, I mean maybe a couple of hundred here and there, that sort of thing. I don't mean thousands, but some people earn thousands. If you're on a hit show in America, you'd earn thousands. But I never had stuff on commercial radio over here. I did get some royalties from France for a track, some songs I was involved with, some kind of in the 90s techno sort of style stuff. And that was quite good, a couple of $100 from just airplay royalties alone in France.
Right.
But people, I notice at work we have, talking about 3AK and elevating it, we have Magic 1278 on.
Oh, God.
Yes, that's right. And they play the same 12 records over and over and over. You hear the Air Supply songs, and then you hear some old John Farnham thing, and then you hear, there's like, well, you feel like it's 12 records, if you know what I mean. And this river band. And so Glenn Wheatley must be making a fortune out of Magic 1278.
Yeah. If that's all you're listening to as the music you listen to when you're 14 and you're still listening to it now when you're 60, it's those songs. Look, they were good songs in their time, but the first note, I know what the song is. It's just so repetitive, like a cross band. We just talk about the same things, but.
Well, tonight's been a slight exception, but yes, that's right. It is predictable, but that's what they like. They want predictability to sell ads. They don't want people to be scared off by, I don't know this. What are they playing? I don't recognise it. It doesn't bring back the endless days of sunshine and brightness. Mm-hmm. So that's what it. Well, you don't want to upset the listener. It's all run by accountants and lawyers now. That's the whole trouble. It's not run by radio people.
No, that's right. Just a formula. I remember the ABC, they used to meticulously fill in the daily record of musical items. So if you had, like Richard Coombe, a musical program or something like that, he would have to have this big sheet. It was a big super sheet filled up the whole desk, and he'd be writing the details, the record label, the number, all those weirdo numbers on records, and the date and all this sort of thing.
Well, now they do a sample every year. So what they do is they have a week. All the stations, they don't do it like that now. They do it once a year. They have a sample week, and they have to log what gets played during that sample week. So whatever gets played in that week, they're the ones that actually earn the royalties. So in a way, it's not really fair. It means that people like because stations still have to play a certain amount of Australian content. There's a quota system still. So you find it's the Air Supplies and the John Farnhams and the Little River Band and all those people that get most of the airplay on the on the Goldie stations and the and people like Magic, and then on Triple J, they have whatever is in that sample week. If they're going to have whatever whether it's, I'm not sure what's really big right now, a bit out, but they'll have today's main acts. So there's still going to be a lot of people left on the outer that don't get included in that one sample week per year.
Most of the programs at the ABC were pre-programmed by the music library, and the announcer just played. They didn't have to worry about paperwork, which was easy for them. But at 2RG, they had, whenever APRA Week came around, twice a year or something, the manager would say, there's APRA Week next week, put a big sign up in the studio, so you had to play all your Australian music. So there's a special, they'd bring out all the Australian music that you'd never play normally, stick it in the studio in a big boxes, Safeway crates or whatever they were, and you had to play all this Australian music. So it must look great on the APRA form, 70% Australian music. This station is doing a great thing. Of course, when APRA Week finished, you didn't have to fill in all the rubbish. You just went back to American crap.
That's right. Oh, yes, we'll have another Eagles record.
Oh, Eagles.
Well, I'm running down the road trying to loosen my load. I got
Seekers.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh, Seekers. Yes, Seekers get so much airplay on Magic 1278.
do they?
I still need you there beside me, no matter what I do, for I know I'll never find another you.
1278, they've got crap quality. Even their DAB only goes to 6K. It's incredible why a station would limit their audio quality on both the AM and FM service.
Is that the one you did a video of where you actually showed the...
That's
bandwidth?
right. Yep,
Yes,
that's
I remember
right.
that. Mm.
And the thing is, that's the AM. They do the same on DAB. How ridiculous. I can tell when I tune to the cross DAB, when I go to Magic, if there's no top end. I mean, what's the point?
I actually looked at it today on using Audacity. It didn't have much of a bandwidth. I looked at 3AR, or Radio National as it is now, and it seemed to have a much wider bandwidth.
They go to flat to 9K. Most stations do. They go to 9 or 10K.
One thing I've got to say with my little radio here, which is fairly wide bandwidth, it all sounds pretty nice.
Which radio is this? The one you bought?
The one I built. I don't know if you've seen VK3YE Peter's video.
Ah,
where
yes.
He builds a one-valve regenerative receiver.
You built the one-valve wireless?
Yeah.
With your own little hands?
Yes, indeed.
Own little soldering iron?
And yes, and it glows.
It glows and it also goes, apparently.
Yeah, and also warms my hands when I put it near the valve. It's really quite fun, actually.
Yeah.
Well, Peter, now you can build a 160-metre AM transmitter.
No, I've already ordered the kit
Yeah.
for soldering, but you use solder glue instead. You just stick down your components. So I'll see how that goes.
It sounds a little dicey.
Hope it's conductive.
Well, here's the problem. Just a second. There we go.
You have a circulating earth problem.
Let me play with it for a little bit.
Okay, we'll let you play with it
sort
for a little bit.
Well, Chris, you're working on something too, aren't you?
Oh, I see. It's a regenerative receiver that's actually in oscillation.
How's that sound?
Typical regenerative receiver.
I think it's Radio National. That's Magic.
It shouldn't be whistling. You should be operating it below the oscillation point.
I should indeed. This is the local Bayswater station. Huge signal into here. Yeah.
And the interesting thing there is both 1620 and 1629 kilohertz carry identical programming.
Wonder why that is. Same licensee?
Yeah, one's over in the west and one's over at Bayswater, so they basically get metropolitan coverage.
Yeah, is the other one Williamstown, or is that...
Yeah, Williamstown, the Fisherman's Pier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually get a better result, not by tuning the variable capacitor, but by moving the ferrite inside my coil.
Depends on your impedances and what you're matching.
All that you just heard there is without an external antenna.
Really?
That's just picking it up with just the coil. So it's I actually find it works better without an external antenna.
That simply means your external antenna is overloading the tuned circuit, and you should have some sort of tuning on the antenna.
Yep. So, but send it to anybody to check out Peter's video, because he's got a link off there to the actual circuit diagram.
Yep, they're very good, and of course valves all go. I know, and Chris, you'll like this. I mean, you're a big valve fan, audio
not
fan.
Really.
And look, for $5,995, you can buy. This is from this week's green guide from a hi-fi place that's named after a theatre, an old theatre that starts with T. And
that one.
The A100T. For $6,000, it's yours. And look at this description. Valves of the way. The A100T features a newly developed custom output transformer designed to achieve highly delicate and precise sound with extraordinary musicality from the tubes.
Wow.
Are you sure this review is not from 1929? Because it sounds awfully like it.
And then it says, extraordinary musicality from the tubes, but with the authority of the best transistor amplifiers.
Authority.
So now we have...
now, these are words that have no dictionary meaning at all.
Use of key words.
musicality, authority. I want to... How many authorities have I got on this amplifier?
Oh, yes. And
We used to have the S meters that had S1 to 9 and then important.
And the musicality, lift music, more advanced music, I don't know what they've got here. Here's the A... And for $9,000, if you've got a bit of extra money, the A50T... It's a bigger brother and all features an output. It features an onboard 24-bit 192 kilohertz digital analog converter for an extraordinary listening experience. Also featured is newly designed output transformer, resulting in a rich sound stage with a presence that belies its 50 watts.
What a sales pitch.
I think the old Pioneer amplifier I picked up on the unburnable rubbish out in the street a few days ago would probably sound as good. But it looks like it's got KT88. It's all polished, chrome, all that sort of thing. Yep, musicality and authority. That's what we want, an authoritative sound.
Yes, and is that $9,000, did you say?
Yes, no, $8,999.
Oh, it's a steal.
It is a steal, but you're not stealing here, Mr.
A fool and his money are frequently parted.
Yes. I think they're a bit overrated.
Now, this is what I was saying. Chris, you're working on a valve product, aren't you?
No. What gave you that impression?
The 160 emitters.
Yes.
Oh, that's the only valve in it's the PA. The rest of it's all transistorized.
But just think, because you've got a valve, you'll have extra musicality, and when you come... When you come on the coffee break, you'll sound so important and authoritative because it will... Oh, no, you need transistors for that. Oh, no, you've got transistors in some part of the circuit. So you'll have the voice of authority.
Oh, God.
I thought you'd like that. I just read that. Megan, that ad.
Perhaps I should read. This sounds just as impressive. It's an advertisement. I'll see if you can guess the age of it from what I'm reading. The reproducer consists of a cone-shaped aluminium diaphragm anchored at its exact centre to the end of a vibratory reed. This reed is attached and made to vibrate over the incredibly wide range of harmonics from 180 per second to 3,000 per second by the current which passes it above it. And what you see next to this advertisement, of course, look like Granny's ear trumpet with a headphone stuck on the end.
3,000 cycles, that would be...
This is August the 1st, 1925, the Homecraft magazine.
That'd be a pretty hi-fi thing. I think if you put it on the end of the authoritative speaker... the
authority amplifier, at least the lack of high-frequency response won't reproduce any distortion. There's no harmonic distortion because there are no harmonics.
Yeah. Oh, what?
Really, what gets you is you read the early radio magazines from the 20s and they're using exactly the same words.
Yeah. I like when they talk about sonic performance.
The buzzwords, yeah.
Sonically, this is a very good amplifier. And say, well, it should be the perfect bit of wire. What goes in comes out. They shouldn't be adding or detracting anything. Expensive turntables for $2,399.
Oh, aren't they incredible?
Those JH turntables are probably just as good. Look, low noise AC coupled motor, fine balanced aluminium platter, carbon fibre tone arm.
A carbon fibre tone arm. Now,
Yeah.
look, the trouble with that is that carbon fibre has a rather appalling resonance. The whole arm system can resonate, so it might look impressive.
Yes.
But it probably performs like crap.
It says a real sense of space, air, atmosphere.
What?
The Classic does a fabulous job at this
Like
price.
the space air atmosphere between the writer's ears.
That's the IX Impression Classic for $1,000. You can go up to $300. Oh, the cheap one, $399. It's got a resonance optimized platter.
You know, they're just words that are designed to captivate the potential consumer.
The Project 6X Perspex 5 is a brilliant turntable doing everything a turntable should.
It turns.
Turns. And in a stylish fashion. It must turn a bit forward and backwards and dance around in a style.
What do they expect it to do? Turn on its side and roll out the door?
I'm sure my buyer turntable here will be just as good. Let's see any more silly hi-fi ads with valvey things. Record and playback digital radio. Your favourite AM and FM radio stations are now broadcasting in digital. Enjoy all the benefits of digital radio has to offer, including record and replay in brackets, few selected models only. Basically none. Clearer sound with the little toilet 2-inch speaker. Most of them have. Audiophile stuff. Sonic excellence is what we need. Sonic musicality, authoritative excellence.
Here are the key words.
Look at this. These are a range of valve amplifiers of exceptional quality that will bring truly high-end valve amplifiers within the budget of most audiophiles. The amplifiers have a unique and elegant appearance that appeals to the eye immediately. They sound crap, but they're good for the eye. The quality of sound they can reproduce is outstanding. A Class A single-ended triode, well, it'd put out about 1 microwatt. They employ a true 240-volt AC mains transformer. That's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, it has such an effect on the sound quality.
Designed specifically for Australian conditions. Take a look yourself and note that almost every valve amp on sale in this country will be manufactured in China and come with a 220-volt transformer. I see they've got 240, so that's very good. Valve amps utilising 220-volt AC mains transformers produce vibration of the mains transformer and overvoltage in the secondary stage.
What?
Yeah, that's what they say.
This is obviously not written by an electrical engineer.
The ultimate effect is decreased musicality, instability,
That word.
and premature breakdowns of components, especially valves.
I suppose next they'll be telling us that the capacitors will prematurely ejaculate if
That's
there's
right.
vibration. Oh, I've never had such a good laugh for quite a while. I mean, the fact is, if there are some fools out there that'll believe it, they deserve to get sucked.
I think they're made to look important. The sound control performance of the JA2/JA150B6J luxury version is 10 marks. The performance of the standard version should be marked above 9. Packed in a silver aluminium alloy chassis, the JA2 standard version has the same external design as the luxury model. However, we added valve outputs to the standard version for fans who prefer valve amps. Now you can choose preamp out, or I see they've got the switch. You can just use the valves only for if you want to. Back to the 30s.
Just trying to find some contemporary 1920s descriptions here. Some of those are absolutely hilarious. It's just a combined total harmonic distortion of one they were boasting that it produced no more than 25%.
You might be able to understand it.
Yes, it might actually be intelligible with the right level. Look, the trouble with the radios in the 20s were they used generally grid leak detectors, which are square law detectors, and they produce reasonable distortion as long as the transmitter doesn't modulate more than about 60%. A lot of the early broadcast transmitters, because they were using high-sing modulation, didn't modulate more than about 60%. And now we've got transmitters that are designed for 100%. Grid leak detector will sound awful.
I found out there's this mob called Golden Days Radio.
Yeah, and the transmitters at Caulfield
Racecourse.
Racecourse, that's right, yeah.
That's the right area.
Have you seen their studio?
No, I haven't seen
I think
it.
it's a bit more elaborate than that, and they're designed for the over 40s, over 50s, I think, basically. They're a nostalgia station, aren't they? Actually, Alex here, he produces very good programs. He has an extremely good radio announcing voice and a very good impression of what radio listeners wanted. That wasn't the intention.
No, I know what you meant. Yeah, they play music like this.
Oh, now let's not denigrate. It's basically designed for that age group. Ralph goes into stuff that's so old that nobody can remember it. But there is still entertainment value.
Give it another 10 years, and David, and you'll be playing stuff that's older than what they're playing.
It's good YouTube music, though. Someone skipping across a field, that sort of music would be...
The trouble is they have so many copyright restrictions on YouTube music. That's why I produced mine just purely with location sound. I couldn't be bothered putting music on.
Oh, I don't think you'd have trouble with this, though. You can put this on, it'd be fine. You wouldn't get many copyright problems with that.
I'd just be worried about my intellectual reputation.
The laugh at their mission statement to promote on community radio the nostalgic sound of music that has broad appeal for people of any age, particularly the senior members of the community.
When I was 20, I was more interested in the music of 1925 than I was of my own period, and I still am.
Yeah, and there's not many people really interested in 1925 music. It's probably a fairly...
The thing is, my parents were in their mid-40s when they had me, so they were, the collection of records I started with was played constantly when I was a kid was from the mid-20s. I guess it just infected me.
Well, we heard the entrance of the Little Fawns.
That's 1931.
Oh, that's quite recent. That's modern.
Yes,
that's
more
modernity. We used to hear Entrance of the Little Fawns and...
Nun's Chorus from Casanova.
Yes, all that sort of stuff.
What was the 20s era called again? Because we had the swinging
Jazz
60s.
Age.
What was it? Sorry, Chris?
The Jazz Age. Swing came in the 30s.
Yeah, because that's the era they're looking at with Underbelly at the moment.
No, I've had a look at that a few times. The art direction's off. They've got a mixture of clothes from the 20s, 30s and 40s. They've got a mixture of music from the teens, 20s, 30s and 40s. It really is... I mean, it might be a nice entertainment series, but it's not terribly historical.
They consulted someone like you to get it all right for them.
But what they've done is they've used modern songs like Ice House and even Australia Crawl, and they've given them a 20s feel. It's quite extraordinary.
Personally, I don't think you could ever give those in 20s.
I heard Great Southern Land done in a 20s fashion.
Really?
And an Australian Crawl classic that they did in a 20s style, and a Deck Chairs Overboard song they did in a 20s. Actually, I was... and some other ones. It was actually quite... it's not to be taken seriously, obviously, though.
What, Underbelly?
Underbelly, that's right. It's using his... the thrust of it is based on historical events, but then that takes some creative liberties and package it up in an entertainment sort of way.
Creative liberties is not quite the term that I'd use. A complete historical fiction would be close to the mark.
Yeah, look, you can get too carried away with historical things, but...
Well, it can be accurate. I mean, Carson's Law back in the 80s was very accurate in its reproduction of 20s fashions and music and all the rest of it. They did a very
Godfrey
good job.
Carson. Yes, I remember Godfrey Carson.
Carson's Law did quite well for about a year and a half, I think. Early
Yeah, I
80s.
don't mind Carson's Law. That's right. In fact, I'm surprised they don't repeat it.
Oh, well, now that Hector Crawford's died, I suppose the copyright on all of that stuff is a bit questionable.
Oh, poor old Heck.
Yes, that's right. He used to have his studios in Box Hill, didn't he?
Originally Abbotsford, near where the brewery was. Then they moved it about 1970-something to Middleborough Road in Box Hill, yeah.
We'll see if we've got any emails from our listeners' correspondence. Maybe the Silvers.
Hope not.
No, I don't think
Dear Mr. Stewart, please
No,
put
they-
that transmitter off the air straight away.
so. You'll be booked off the air.
And they find that your 160-metre transmitter is capable of transmitting on unauthorised frequencies.
Well, if you take the crystal out, put another crystal in, it could transmit on unauthorised frequencies,
That
I suppose.
actually has me puzzled, because if Amateurs are allowed, well, anybody above foundation level is allowed to build their own equipment, and that, by its nature, would be able to go anywhere.
Exactly. Look,
Just wonder if it's been actually tested in a court of law.
I think the whole thing comes down to those Chinese handheld radios. That's really what they're interested in. But the legislation of the
But
word
why
is
are
so
they
vague.
interested particularly in those? Why particularly those?
Because there was an incident in country Victoria, and this was told to me, an incident in country Victoria where someone got onto, now I thought police were all digital, but they got onto the somewhere around 160, 170 megahertz, and they were causing havoc, and the guy got charged. But the fact that he was using these radios for that kind of disruptive interference purposes put the pressure on ACMA to do something about these radios.
but the silly thing is, there's thousands out there, but who do they know who's got them? Well,
Well, they were sold in full-page advertisements in Amateur Radio magazine for 6 months running at the end of 2007, I think.
So if they want to find out who's got them and book them, the only people they know, they can look up the licensed amateur people. They're most likely to have them, probably the most likely not to mess around with them and cause havoc.
That's the point. There must be something more to this than meets the eye.
What they want to do, I think, is bring what they've got in America. In America, amateur transceivers like those, we'll refer to them as amateur transceivers, they're locked into amateur bands. So in America, the FCC have made it so that you're not allowed to sell radio transmitting apparatus that can actually go out of the authorised bands of its intended market. And although we don't have legislation quite to that effect, I think that's the thrust of what they're trying to do here.
Well, I know what they're trying to do, but if you look at the regulations for amateur stuff, there is no guidelines, there's no regulations about the type of equipment.
No definitive, that's right. Yeah.
So you can either build your own on a desktop full of junk and make it come out on an amateur band, or you can modify a taxi or army radio, you can do what you like. So I don't know why you could have an all-band army radio you're talking on 160 with, or you get one of these Chinese things and just talk on Channel D.
Well, that's it. And the thing is, it'd be awful if we're all restricted to using, a selection of black boxes and that's it.
Well, if that was the case, I would simply surrender my amateur license. I mean, to me, the construction side of the hobby is the hobby. I'm not interested on transmitting on commercial gear except for these occasional Saturday night transmissions today.
I think that WIA is onto this. I think what's happened, somebody has been causing havoc on the emergency services. Someone high up in the government said to the ACMA, fix this and get rid of this problem. And the ACMA have knee-jerk reaction and had a thing against these radios and trying to make everyone scared about having them. I think that's what's happening.
Yes, they've gone from being a sleeper cell to cells that have been woken up.
And if they come here, they'll see only 1920s vintage equipment.
That's right.
And there won't be any modern Chinese equipment that can go anywhere.
Not only can your equipment not go outside the bands on VHF, I'd be surprised if half of it could reach above 20 meg.
It'll all quieten down at some stage, I suppose.
This is why I haven't been able to understand why there's such a fuss.
It is still a blurry issue because I bought a Yaesu handheld radio, 2-metre job, the other day from a company in Sydney, and I spoke to the fellow there for a fair while. Actually, we were talking about this very subject, and well, he said to me, "There's no law against owning these other radios." And that there's nothing actually in the legislation that stops a person having transmitting apparatus that can go these places, or probably go anywhere for that matter, because it's the use of. Now this is the sticky point. But he was saying it's the use of this stuff that is illegal, the use of transmitting equipment without on outside band frequencies. So if you're an amateur, to transmit obviously out of band. But owning the equipment, this is what he said, was not illegal. But then our friends at ACMA state something a little bit different to that. So it's...
Yeah.
The friends at ACMA are actually, read the Radio Communications Act, you'll see that it says that if you actually own equipment that is capable of transmitting out of band, you are presumed to have used it out of band. So, if you get found out, under the strict literal interpretation of the Act, basically you're guilty until proven innocent.
On that case, I think it's something that requires a court case because it's in a very grey area.
It was snuck in the late 90s when they changed the regulations. I think no one was on top of it, and I was under the impression that you could have any equipment as long as you don't use it illegally. But if you do read the Act, it does actually say that. If it's capable of being used, it's illegal. So if you've got army stuff, flying doctor stuff, marine stuff, taxi stuff that works, you can go into goal for having it.
Now, hang on 80 metres, right, there's the DX window, which is up the top end of 80 metres. If your rig is capable of transmitting just below that, I presume that it's illegal then?
In the strict section of the law, you're not allowed to have a transmitter that will transmit between the two legal parts of the band.
Interestingly, the only time I've heard of them acting on that particular clause is with VHF transceiving equipment, because as far as I know, it's more the VHF side of things which is the problem. Those are the comms that they rely on.
I could care
HF
less.
has always been a movable feast where people generally use one frequency if they can't use another.
Look, I think the WIA having negotiations with the department, because this legislation, if it was taken strictly, would actually mean that most amateur equipment is actually illegal as it stands.
Not only that, it would make the ability to build any equipment null and void.
The Act contemplates that during an emergency you're allowed to transmit on frequencies that you're not ordinarily entitled to. In other words, non-amateur frequencies.
I believe that
right?
it depends on whether it's an emergency where people's safety are at stake. The top level where people's lives are at stake, you are technically allowed to use any communications medium at your disposal.
Well,
unreservedly.
As an amateur, how could you do that if you didn't possess transmitting equipment that was capable of transmitting out of band?
This is a story I've relayed before. I had one of the standard C5220s or something, which were the first of these radios you could program for out-of-band use. And they've long since failed, and the EPROMs are gone or whatever. Totally tuttled. In fact, I got one you turn on there, just jams on transmit, and they're a very good set. They're dual band. They could do crossband repeat the whole thing. And we were in a remote area in the snowy mountains, filming some people on horseback riding, and one of the people riding, a woman, the horse bucked, ran away, and a branch of a tree hit her. She fell off the horse, knocked unconscious in a very, very bad way. What do you do? We're about 4 or 5 hours in on a very rough four-wheel drive track to do. So I got the standard out, and I had a list of used to have a list of all the utility frequencies, CFAs, Department of Lands and all this sort of stuff. So I dialed in the appropriate CFA channel and the appropriate subtone, and called up on the channel using my call sign, VK3ASE, explained the situation, and it sort of got worked out from there.
Did you call the toilet PAN, or did you call out the first day of May?
I didn't call out anything. I just called in. I didn't want to get people too excited. I just called in, call sign, explaining the situation, and I got back to a base station, and they organised ambulance and hospitals, and so that was a classic case. If I didn't have a radio for that, who knows what the situation might have turned into.
Very true.
That item is actually captured of me calling up is actually captured on I've got it on tape here somewhere.
Is the girl okay?
Not totally okay, but she's recovered enough to live a reasonable life, I think.
I've heard of so many accidents on motorbikes and horses that I would not be induced in a pink fit to go near either.
I know. I used to ride a motorbike for 20 years. I wouldn't sit on one now. The older you get, the more worried you are about.
I think also having children gives you a sense of responsibility to them that changes your opinion of expendability.
Yeah, riding a motorbike in the city is just one bash and there you are, leg smashed.
Well, look at poor old Les Hazeldine.
That's right.
What was it, 6 months in hospital back in 1977, I think. Spun off underneath a truck or something, didn't he?
Yeah, they hit a truck. Him and Bonnie were on the bike.
Okay.
And I think she only got a broken arm, badly broken, but he got basically everything broken.
Yeah. Lucky to get out of that alive.
Definitely.
Well, the fact that they'd allow him to set up a radio transmitting station in his ward probably indicates how long he was going to be in there.
Do you mind if I change the subject? Sorry, Steve Jobs passed away during the week, and one interesting outcome of that was that apparently the news of his death crashed Twitter.
Really? Yeah, I suppose it would, really, wouldn't it?
But yeah, like I was saying, Les, with the hospital now, if you tried to set up big RF things in hospital now, I don't think they'd let you do it.
Well, they wouldn't. There'd be a health and safety.
The fact is that after, 35 years, there's so much more equipment that's RF sensitive in hospitals now, and so much more is done automatically. I mean, there's that machine they stick on the pole that
goes ding. If you had a morphine drip, you'd transmit so it gives you more morphine.
In 2006, that week I had happened to do something very stupid.
Step on a rake.
I stepped on a rake and put the tines right through my foot.
The rake's progress.
Yes, the rake through my foot. But the guy opposite me had been in the ward, had been in a motorcycle accident, and he was smashed up pretty badly, and he was considerably bigger and stronger than I was. And if I had pushed the transmit button, his morphine infuser for all of his injuries probably would have sent him off to dreamland or somewhere beyond. So I felt very inhibited for that first week.
Yeah, well, now you just take a Wi-Fi device and... well, not Wi-Fi and 3G or something, I suppose. That would.
No, I haven't seen them used in hospitals so much.
Ox Hill Hospital has plenty of Wi-Fi outlets in their corridor roofs.
Yeah.
I didn't ever see those. I was in there 06, so it may not have been the same situation as there is now.
They have all these signs that say no mobile phones and all the rest, yet you see the hospital staff themselves still using all their mobile phones in front of all the signs.
Yeah, but they're important doctors. They might have to get a proper call.
Box Hill Hospital is closing something like 30-plus beds. And I couldn't help thinking of that Yes Minister episode where they talked about opening that hospital that was fully staffed but didn't actually have any patients.
When I worked at the National Film and Sound Archive, they closed our video publication program, saying that it would allow them a greater allocation of resources. One questions what for. One wonders what those sort of organisations are actually for. I suspect they're for the preservation of the jobs of the people in them. And a lot of what the publicly funded institutions do is done more for being seen to be thought to be doing things rather than to actually do them.
Very true.
I remember that one of the things that happened at the Film and Sound Archive, I'm going to dump on them. One of the things that they did was to get digital noise suppression equipment and 30-channel graphics. Nobody had any idea of how to use them.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's been a big night tonight. A lot of topics of conversation going to bring up.
Oh, there's one thing, Dave.
Yes.
I've now gone through 60 of my cassettes, transferring them to digital.
Ah, cassettes.
And I found a number of cassettes of yourself, of Agar, and of Tony, recorded variously in Devonport and Hobart when I lived in Hobart.
Oh, right, okay.
In the case of the Hobart recording, it's about 45 minutes worth of Tony recorded from Hobart, and it's quite good quality too, although I was... there's also a recording of Ken Gott, VK3 AUJ, I think he was, actually transmitting from Deal Island, basically.
Really?
Back in 1982 or 3, I think, and the person speaking to him was now known as VK3HP, Grant. But in those days, I think he was VK3RJ or RW, I'm not quite sure.
He was GRT for a while too. He changes call signs like some people change...
Your underwear.
Yeah, that's right. He's now Harry Potter.
Yeah, but anyway, he was in Vermont in those days over his...
Vermont.
He was over his video business, I think.
That's right.
But this is all recorded on 160 metres, and the guy on... It was actually a guy on Erith Island, one of the 3 islands in the group. There's Erith, Dover and Deal. And he was one of that member of a group of academics from Melbourne Uni who used to go there every summer.
So a summer on the Island.
So he set up batteries and a transmitter in the survival hut on Erith Island, had a 30-foot aluminium pole at one end.
It's amazing what you find in these old tapes.
Yeah, I just, with cassettes, I don't know about you, but the problem with cassettes is that you've got enough space on a cassette to put about 3 words of summary of what's on them. And there's frequently 90 minutes on there with about 5 different recordings. So after a while, you'll completely lose track. And now making these digital copies, it's very easy to run the cursor up and down the copy to find out what's on them once they're digitised.
I haven't got to my cassettes yet. I'm still doing the reel-to-reels.
There are bits and pieces of 160 metres, just bits and pieces all over the place. I haven't got through digitising more than about 30% at this stage. But I used to use cassettes purely for instantaneous playback if I wanted to listen to it in the car or anything important that I thought would have long-term value. I recorded on reel-to-reel. But sometimes, funnily, the stuff that you record just incidentally on cassette that has no value at the time, sometimes by its survival for 35 or 40 years, it attains a relevance that it never had in its own time, if you know what I mean.
It's little snippets. That's why all the tapes I want to throw into the dump master, I've listened to them or put them through, because you never know, there could be just something, 1 5-minute segment at the end or 2-minute segment of something that's irreplaceable.
Yeah, well, naturally, anything of mine pre-1974 I look at particularly well because I know that very few other people are likely to have recorded them. But after that period, 74 through to about 1980, everybody recorded everything.
They did a few things to get missed, but yeah, everything got recorded.
Dave, when you converted your old recordings to digital, what did you do with those old actual tapes?
I've still got them.
You still got them?
Yeah, I never throw away the originals of those anyhow. Most of the tapes will still play. Look, the Auntie's Pink tape is very robust. That still works perfectly. Most of the Tandy tape's okay. Look, some reels squeak.
Anything with Ampex on it is likely to be a problem.
Yeah, I remember that. The branch went to all this trouble to buy Grandmasters for his really important things, and they were the tapes that wrecked the first.
Actually, the branch actually made a bulk buy of tapes, not Grandmaster, but they were
World Record Club.
But they were not Ampex. Yeah, that's the stuff that's lasted.
He also had Tandy tape that lasted as well.
The Tandy tape, the cheap Tandy tape ticed, and some of the high-quality studio mastering tape is hopeless.
See, you still need the only trouble with that is you still need those old machines, like tape recorders to play these things, don't you?
The heads are almost all starting to wear, so it's a case of get it off the medium while you can.
Look, I've got plenty of rollers, Mark IVs and things. So I actually haven't got a decent cassette machine. I've got one of those rack-mounting TX, those quite professional-looking things, but the belt's gone. If I can find a replacement belt, that'll be a very good dubbo machine.
Funnily enough, I have exactly the same machine with exactly the same problem.
And funny thing with the test cams, at work I put on some very, very high-quality headphones and played a tape that was almost, over-modulated. And there was actually some ringing being played back from it. So I don't really consider those particular test cams to be all that good, to be honest.
I used to have one of those Tascam Porter Studios. Do you remember those?
Oh, yes.
That was like the mixing desk with the integral tape recorder.
Yes, that's right.
I should say cassette recorder, not tape recorder.
Yeah, cassette recorder and 4-track machine. Actually, they're pretty good. Bruce Springsteen used one to make his album, what was it, Nebraska?
The basic problem with the machine was its signal to noise.
Well, these Porter Studios use DBX noise reduction, but every time I put a bass, every time I put a bass drum in there, I get this breathing effect. Like, doom, doom.
What happens with the DBX system? The thing is that it cannot look ahead in time. There wasn't any such thing as a bucket brigade device to allow it to in those days. So that the first half cycle or so, what came through had to be distorted if it was being modified in its dynamic characteristics. Well, they're basically a volume compression expansion system for different parts of the audio spectrum. If you compressed onto the tape, you had to have a system which could track expansion off the tape. And none of them were properly set up for compression and expansion to track so it would bugger your transient response. I mean, they really... The only trouble, as I say, constantly with cassettes was, well, two things. One is signal-to-noise ratio, which was definitely limited compared to any reel-to-reel tape. The other thing was, because of the very slow tape speed, you had to put an awful lot of treble boost onto record to get flat frequency response. And frequently you would end up with sibilant distortion through clipping at high frequency.
Well, if you jangle keys in front of the mic, they'd always splat.
I'm just wondering, with those Porter Studios, did they run double speed? I can't remember.
Some of them did.
Some could.
Yeah.
In fact, that got them almost to the point where they started to sound like reel-to-reel. Reel-to-reel always had a wider track and generally better quality tape, and the machines tended to be better quality. But we mostly, I think I'm right in saying, Dave, we mostly ran the log tapes at 7.5 or 3 3/4 quarter track. That gave you about 55, maybe 60 dB on the best tapes, and a good 15 kilohertz of response, even with worn head.
Well, most of my tapes were done at quarter track, 3 3/4. So on a 1800-foot tape would give you 6 hours of program material, which the main trouble with cassettes was they didn't last long enough for crossbands, and you could not, except in very specialised language type lab recording things, you couldn't split the tracks. You couldn't record one track each time and have 4 separate tracks. Yep. That was the main reason. I think if cassettes could have done that, we might have used them more. Another good thing is that the machines we got, the Ackeyes, only had 7.5 and 3 3/4, which is good because I'm sure if they had 1 7/8, we would have used it for economy and would have had worse quality results.
I used to have one of those Ackeyes.
Yep, I've got a couple here. I've got from sales and things, and with good heads and good tape, the quality is excellent off them. It's,
the trouble is, at a distance in time, nearly all of these so-called good quality tapes are exhibiting dropouts or variation of high frequency response levels, and that really does stuff up the Dolby DBX system.
Oh, I agree. Yep.
Well, the thing with back then is those reel-to-reels, you'd want to run them at the slow speed because they were jolly expensive.
Unless you get them from the ABC X-Pink tapes.
Oh, then you're laughing.
So, John probably comment on this, but I remember he had a tape splitting machine for
yes.
half-inch computer tape.
And it wasn't very good tape for audio.
The cut line used to wander, so the tape varied in width.
And it wasn't very good tape. Look, it was okay. It was cheap tape.
But what type you use?
Transferring the cassettes, because I've got a feeling that within about 5 years, it's going to be very, very difficult to find a decent cassette machine that works properly.
That's it. All the belts wreck or the rubbers fade or whatever.
They were never made with the longevity in mind, as many reel-to-reel machines were.
They're semi-professional things.
If I don't transfer them now, my feeling is that they'll always stay lost. I mean, I'm finding a lot of oral history stuff from the 70s that I really need to keep. I interviewed, for instance, the studio manager of Vocalion Records, who cut the first electrical recordings in Melbourne between 1928 and 31, and I think I recorded that in 1978. He died in 1981. There's about 2.5 hours of that where he's describing how to record on wax and what they used for amplifiers and how
that's
they
incredible.
arranged their carbon microphones and stuff. There's also a good hour and a bit of Gil Miles, who was the first experimental television engineer for 3UZ in 1929. So, I've only played them once or twice since they were made, and they were made on Superscope, so that the quality is at least half reasonable.
Yeah, they're a very good machine. You should edit them and put them on YouTube or something. It sounds like
probably
interesting.
Should. At the very least, I should get you an MP3.
Yeah, I'd love to hear. Yeah.
Now, when I was last on emissions, we were talking about, and this is very interesting too, we were talking about Tony and emissions and the beginnings and how it all happened and the recordings. And Dave, you mentioned back then that you had some footage of Tony in his studio transmitter room. Is that right? And
yeah, that's right. Yes.
Two lots, isn't there? There's one from the early 70s and one from later.
Yeah, the early stuff that the Knock shot in the very early 70s, then 70-80ish or whatever, stuff that I shot with a Clegg lamp. So, yeah, there's a bit of footage of the branch.
It would be good to have that up.
Yeah, look, I must put it up.
I think from memory that some of the footage of the branch was shot while he was on the air talking, so you could almost synchronise it.
Yep, it can. You can hear on the crossband the whirring of the camera, so it'd be easy enough to sync up just when the whirring starts.
From our discussion that at that time when we were talking about the history of missions and Tony and Origins, did you say, I can't remember, did you say that after he left Alston Wick, he never put up a 160 metre?
That's correct, yes.
Never went back to 160 metres. I think it was October or November of 1980. That was the end of it.
Yep, packed up and left. The tower was there till 1995. I must re-feed that tower pulling down video in HD.
Oh, so when did he stop 160? Or,
End of 1980.
And the tower was there till 1995?
That's right.
And Dave, that's when you made that video of the tower coming down?
That's right.
Oh, that's a long time between, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. The only reason the tower came down, his mother was selling the house to move elsewhere, and they had to get rid of the tower.
Pity another ham couldn't have bought the house and kept the tower.
Well, that could have been good, but pretty unlikely. Or you think one of the phone companies could have used it for a cell phone?
That's right, mobile phone tower.
Now they probably would. Yeah.
Because it's, what, 60 plus 10 feet or something? So 60 plus 10, 70 feet, was that right?
Something like that, 60 or 70
I
feet.
think the tower itself was about 55 or 60 feet high, and there was about a 16-foot aluminium pole up the top of that.
It was so convenient to be able to climb up it and sit on that rotted wooden thing around it.
You managed to get to the top landing. I got up there to the point where I put my fingers on top of that wooden platform, and I froze, and Tony had to come up and pry my fingers off. I lost my nerve.
It's amazing no one ever fell down and killed themselves on that, because they'd have a party, a drunk Heiser's party, and climb up the tower.
Sway.
Yes. Yeah.
And it had a light on top or something, did it?
Yeah, you'd have an RF light.
The light that was on top of it was taken down. What originally Tony had up there next to his 6-metre antenna, I think it was, dipole, was a fluorescent bulb, 40-watt, standard type that you'd use in your kitchen, and it wasn't connected to anything. He just had it up underneath the top hat, and it used to glow when his transmitter came on. And eventually he found out that the non-linearity of the gas discharge was generating harmonics on 80 metres, so he took it down, actually producing harmonic content.
Oh, so it would glow with the modulation when he was talking?
Yeah.
You could walk virtually anywhere in his backyard with a 40-watt fluorescent bulb in your hand and it would light up.
If you were driving down Glenira Road and coming home from a night shift, you'd see the light flashing, or not, just dimly moving, and think, oh, he must be on, and you'd tune the receivers down to 160 and you'd hear playing music or something like that, or a crossband replay.
The flashing would synchronise with the words.
That's right. It was so that Silvers could just tell if he was on or not.
And that's where the whole recording of the mission started to occur after I think I seem to remember this when Tony had some visit or a call or something from the Silvers, and he said, well, from now on I'm going to record everything.
Well, not quite as simple as that. We had a field day. We had a field day down at Port Arlington where we had a kite antenna and the kite started to fall, and somebody said, the transmitter's gone fuck. And a certain suggested that we had said that the transmitter had gone with another Anglo-Saxon word, and from then on Tony's only reaction logically could be to, well, first of all, deny that he'd used that four-letter word, and the second thing was to start recording. But very soon he found that the recordings were a useful test transmission medium for him to go out for little drives in his car to find out how well his transmitter was getting out to different parts of Melbourne. He'd have a ferrite rod transistor radio sitting in his back window of his Tirana, and he'd go hurtling out round the outskirts of Melbourne listening to his own signal.
Why I never had a proper car Sievers. It worked much better on the car than a radio on the back.
Yeah, it was from memory, the thing was nicotine stained and it was a pretty despicable piece of equipment.
The whole thing. If occasionally I lent him some equipment, signal generators or something, to use for a few weeks in his shack, when he got them back, the whole house smelt like nicotine. They were yellow. There was ash in there, and they had that dribbling nicotine. Like, remember the old trains when they had the smoking class railway carriages? They were yellow and dark and nicotine stain dripping down the walls. It was just like that.
you can imagine what the person's lungs must have looked
That's
like.
Well,
right.
didn't he have his regular haunt? He'd go to the middle of the night for burgers and things.
Yes,
down in
George's Hamburger Bar at Caulfield. They were nice hamburgers too.
Tony's staple diet was George's hamburgers, rice ariso, and he would go every year on Boxing Day, the day after, to the local Safeway to pick up six months' worth of Christmas puddings, which he'd eat as a daily fare. It really, look, I shouldn't joke about it, but it really is a surprise that he got to 61.
Well, didn't Evans have the same issue?
He just used to eat fruit buns, of course. Yeah, his wife left him. He'd just eat buns.
Who was this?
Peter Evans.
ABC
breakfast announcer. He had a heart attack thing when he was 50, a few years before he totally tuttled, and they said that when the doctors checked him, there was just his blood was sugar and they just eating too many buns. That's all he ate.
Buns and pastries.
Go down to the bakery and eat those things. But all these people, I thought the Evans was so old. Now I think he was so young.
How old was he when he died?
58, I think.
Truth, I'll be that age next year.
I remember sitting in the tea room, Evans and Bill Ackfield, they were sitting there, and they were all in their sort of early 50s. And I used to think, these poor old men, isn't it a pity these men are so old they'll be dead soon? Isn't it good I'm only 22 and I'm not like them? I'll never be that old. Best years of their life have passed them. They're so old at 50. We're just geriatrics, yes. I used to think they were so old, but now they're so young. Like that song, So Young, by The Cause. We're so young now. No, so old, whatever it is.
Virtually none of the G's who were G's when we were kids are still around.
Well, they wouldn't be if they're 80 then, 30 years later. It's most unlikely. Just like your teachers at school, they're all
One
tuttled.
that surprised me, what was that guy? He used to do the intruder watch coordination. He died recently at the age of 104. Alf Chandler, 3LC.
Yeah, he was so old.
I used to hear him back in the mid-60s on the Wireless Institute broadcast, and he had a trembly voice then like Dr. A.E. Floyd.
Concluding our program this evening, we heard the Peer Gynt Suite No. 2 by Edward Grieg. Philharmonia Orchestra is conducted by Walter Siskind. And now I'll say goodbye till next time.
He looked really bad health, you know.
Yeah.
He shaped like a pepper pot, big belly, and he lasted to 104.
I think this means you just have to eat and drink whatever you want.
Eat and drink and be merry.
Yep, you will live as long
Make
as
sure
you
you
can.
have the genetics, I think, is
Yes.
the key to it.
And look at Steve Jobs. As Peter was saying before, he died at 56 and he was a billionaire. You think with all that money he could have got some extra time.
He could have bought a new liver or whatever.
That's right.
Brain
Yes,
transplant into a new body.
Maybe he would have died earlier if he didn't spend billions. But look, it isn't. It's a bit like John Lennon. Just think of the innovations we might have had in the next 20 years if he had have not died.
Did he have an eye coffin? You know, a touchscreen coffin.
Oh, well,
The thing is, when John Lennon got shot, I was 25, and I thought, well, 40, that's pretty old, so he had a pretty good life, really, because he got to 40.
Maybe Jobs, he might have done more than if he hadn't have had this health problem.
Although time-wise he only had half of what we would consider a normal life, he packed a lot more into it than I have in my 57 years.
You've wasted your life. How do you feel?
Wasted my life. No, I haven't actually. I've enjoyed my life greatly.
Good.
What did Steve Jobs say? He said, stay hungry, be foolish. In other words, don't lose the zest for life. But then look at David Geffen of Geffen Records. He was given a diagnosis years ago that he had 6 or 12 months to live, and just kept going. And he got his house in order, ready to sort of depart the physical dimension, and it turned out to be a false call. And he kept going, and so sometimes the doctors don't know everything.
They certainly don't. Always get a third opinion. It's probably only the last decade he's become sort of famous, I suppose, outside the geeky circle.
Oh, yes. I don't know. I've never been a fan of Apple computers. I think that they're overpriced and their attitude to their customers is not terribly good.
Well, I found the opposite, Chris, I must admit, because I use Apple for music as well as other stuff. As a content provider, I got a good deal on a Mac Pro, and they turned things around for me. I'm a content provider on iTunes, and they turned things around for me there with my label because things were going very bad. So actually, a lot of people actually found Apple to be the way they partner up with people to be really good. You don't have to be rich to partner up with them. It doesn't cost you entry money to speak of to do so. So I found it very open. Much more so than anything over here or any other sizable organisation.
I've been a PC man. Lately I've got some Apple things. As long as you've got competition between things.
Indeed. And actually, your experience with the iPad, I'm trying to get my mother to get one for herself. I think she's swayed by the simplicity of it in that, and also the size of it. You don't have to lug around bits of furniture and worry about viruses, keyboards and desktops. You just this slim object that does it all, and you just touch a screen and
it just works.
And you can take it anywhere. And because every time I go down to Rosebud to see my mum, I've always got to do the computer update. She's got a PC down there and virus protection, and it's a horrible task.
No peripheries, no wires, no cables, just work. You do need a real computer as well, if you want to do real things.
Anyway, gentlemen, I have some news. I've discovered a very interesting website. A very, very interesting website. And it has photos. It's the photos that are really, really interesting.
Yes.
If you can, I'll flick you the link if you like.
Do that. Yes, that is very, Bill, interesting.
And it has... What's even more interesting is the comment.
What sounds most interesting then?
Can you see that writing under there, Pete?
What's it under?
Under that picture, if you click that photo, it gives you...
Yep.
Okay, so I've got the photo. It appears to be a very short hairpin antenna.
Indeed.
When you look at the general population, people are total F-wits and they know nothing. That's why the government can pull them around and tell them what to do and control them.
Well, increasingly, I find it disturbing that people do not read other than what they see on.
I'm surprised with all the availability of these FM radios, transmitters you can get on eBay, that there isn't more pirate stuff on the air. Particularly on FM, it's just so easy to set up.
Well, they talk in there about a linear broadcast 50-watt AM transmitter. But
hang on, 50-watt AM broadcast transmitter. in itself is an oxymoron. I don't know of any AM broadcast transmitters that are that low.
Yeah, they make them. Yeah.
Yeah, Ford Drain Australia make them.